Hello, everyone, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and welcome to the review of the new supernatural horror film, Lee Cronin's The Mummy, written and directed by, wait for it, Lee Cronin. This film stars Jack Rayner, Layla Costa, and May Calloway. In this film, the young daughter of a journalist disappears into the desert without a trace. 8 years later, the broken family is shocked when she returns to them, as this should be a joyful reunion, yet it turns into a living nightmare. Lee Cronin, I'm a big fan of Evil Dead Rise, which came out, I think, 2-3 years ago. And he directed that film. I'm a Deadite. I love Evil Dead. And I think what he did with Evil Dead Rise was like, chef's kiss. Keeping the spirit of the original films alive in that film, yet giving it his own spin and putting his own style and flavor in it. I loved Evil Dead Rise. Going into this movie, I was a little nervous because it's The Mummy. And look, this isn't to be confused with the Brandon Fraser films from the 90s, the more Indiana Jones take on The Mummy. And it definitely wasn't the Tom Cruise Mummy from, I think, about 10-15 years ago, the action adaptation of The Mummy. And that movie was horrible. Straight up trash. And so I was a little nervous going into this, but not nervous in a sense like I think he's going to mess up the lore, because there's no real lore to The Mummy. I mean, you can do whatever you want with The Mummy. And as long as you keep the, I guess, core of The Mummy intact, which is pretty basic. You unearth an evil being that has been dormant for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Yeah, that's pretty much the basics of every Mummy movie, going all the way back to the 1930s. So as long as you keep that intact, you're pretty good. Yet it did pique my curiosity to see Lee Cronin's version of The Mummy, with his style, because he doesn't hold back. He you're getting full bore gore when it comes to Lee Cronin, and I love him for it. If you're gonna go in, what's the saying? Go big or go home. He goes big. he goes big. He's not going to sugarcoat any gore or any disgusting images or blood or whatever the case may be. Now, with all that being said, did I enjoy Lee Cronin's The Mummy? Yes. I really did enjoy it. It's a true horror film, something we don't get these days. You get the standard teen slasher horror movies with no substance. That's what we've grown accustomed to nowadays. It's a breath of fresh air to finally get a horror film that actually told a story. Now, did it execute the story perfectly? No, it didn't. There's some problems with The Mummy here, but I think one of the things going into this, if you haven't seen the film yet, take The Mummy out of it. Don't go in thinking it's a mummy movie. It's not a traditional mummy movie. That's not what you're signing up for here. This is more, if I had to compare it to anything or blend it with certain films to kind of give you an apt description of it, it's more Evil Dead meets Exorcist with a sprinkle, just a little sprinkle of The Mummy in it. That's basically what this is. This is more of a possession film than it is a mummy film. And, that's fine. It didn't have to be mummies. It's not like I'm running out to see a mummy movie because there's a mummy in it. Now, no, it's not like a vampire film or a werewolf film. The Mummy is the Mummy. Probably one of the lamest of the uh, Universal monsters. Because it's a mummy. He's wrapped in bandages and all this other stuff. And now, in regards to this film, let me start off with the positives here. The film is shot beautifully. This movie looks awesome. It is amazing looking. Kudos to Lee Cronin for his style of filmmaking here. The close-ups are disturbing. Everything it's like every shot was creepy. And it wasn't, I don't know if that was the intent or it was just me waiting for something to happen. But it was just creepy, the way the shadows moved, the way certain actors were positioned in rooms and stuff like that. It was very, very creepy. And of course, yes, it's bloody, it's gory. If you're into that, you will love this. If you was into Evil Dead Rise, you would not have a problem with this movie. But I know a lot of people aren't into body horror and that style of horror. So if that's not your bag, you're probably not going to like this movie. But I'm going to throw it off individual, and I completely enjoyed it. I liked the gore because it wasn't gore for gore's sake. It was, it do seem like it was a little gory at times, but it wasn't. It actually worked within the story, believe it or not. I think it worked. The sound design, the way you hear the bones cracking and the flesh peeling and all this other stuff. Yeah, it worked. It worked on you. It works on you in that film. I mean, especially in the theater when you listening to it surround sound. It is very disturbing. The acting here was fairly well. I think all the actors did a really good job, but I'll circle back to the acting yet again when we dive into the negatives because it's split. The acting was good, but there's problems. But I'll get to that in the negative section. But as far as one actor that I felt was great throughout the film, and that was Natalie Grace, who plays Katie, the young daughter who went missing and returned, and she's went through this mummification. Bruh, what a performance by this young actress. She held it. If she didn't work, the movie would have fell apart. The only way this film would have had just a smidget of success, it had to nail this casting of this young girl going through this experience. And I don't know if she's been in anything else. I tried to look her up. She must haven't. I haven't seen her in anything else, me personally. But this feels like her first time at bat. And I will say, I'm not going to say she hit a home run, but it was definitely a double, maybe even a triple. She probably got on third base with it. She was really, really good throughout from every scene she was in, she was great. She was the standout to me. Absolutely amazing. The other young actress who plays the little sister, the youngest of the children, I liked her performance as well. I think she was great throughout the film too. My other positive is the feel of a global type threat, type situation. We're not just centered on one spot or one house with this family here, because we go back and forth to New Mexico with the family and to Egypt where this incident took place. But once we leave early in the movie, we think, okay, that's it for the Egypt part of this film. No, we go back to it, and it's like a concurrent story going on between the detective that's there in Egypt still investigating the missing persons case with Katie and the family that is dealing with this quote unquote reunion in New Mexico. So I love that feel. It felt like it was bigger stakes, bigger scale to this movie, and it worked. Speaking of scale of the film, I think this movie took some big risks, some really big risks. Some I'm gonna go over in the negative portion of the review, but overall, I respect the fact that they took the risk. I respect the fact that they attempted to tell a family drama that dealt with loss, dealt with grief, dealt with trying to move on, trying to push past this missing person, and playing the blame game, who fault it was, and all of those elements that will follow a family that goes through something like this. And man, it was very bold of them to do this in the middle of a supernatural body horror. I thought that was very unique, even though it wasn't original, but it was unique. Now, let's jump into the negatives, because I'm the more I try to hold back on it, the worse it gets. The negatives of this film. This movie, first and foremost, is 2 hours and 15 minutes long. Now, it's long, but it's not boring. But it didn't need to be 2 hours and 14 minutes. Like I said, it's not boring. At no point during that 2 hours and 14 minutes, I was bored. I actually enjoyed everything that I was looking at. But it was 2 hours and 14 minutes, because you can really look back. You can look back and pinpoint 2, maybe even 3 scenes you could have either trimmed down or took out completely, and the story still would have moved forward just as well. That's the stuff that I'm like, okay, you can tighten this up a little bit. It didn't have to be that long. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not against long movies. The Exorcist was about 3 hours, or close to 3 hours. The Shining was close to 3 hours. Those horror films, you can make horror films longer than 90 minutes. I'm all for that, if it's good. Now, this movie was good, but it wasn't 2 hours and 15 minutes good. You could have trimmed this down to a tight hour, 45 minutes, and it would have been just as good, if not better. But it is what it is. It is a little too long. My other issue, well, one of the other issues, going back to the acting, like I mentioned before, the actors were fine. They were doing exactly what was on the paper. They acted their behinds off. They showed emotion. They did everything they were supposed to do. The problem with the acting, all you got was like shocked looks throughout the fight. And that's more of a directing thing than acting. But when I need to hear dialogue, I didn't get dialogue. It wasn't this kind of links up with the length of the movie. If you take away the long shot looks on faces, the holding of those shots, you would get an hour and 45 minutes. You didn't have to lock in on a shocked look on a face. And I mean lock in for like a good minute. We're getting these look. Now, don't get me wrong. In the context of the scene, it makes sense why they would be shocked and speechless at that moment. But we didn't have to linger on it so long. This is a non-spoiler review, if you can't tell, but I'm gonna talk about something, and this isn't spoiling the climax or giving away any story or nothing like that. But this is just one scene in the movie that I'm going to talk about. But if you don't want to hear nothing about the movie, this is the part where you pause it. But if you don't care, here we go. There was a scene where, let's just say, it was a family function. There was a family function going on with a gathering of loved ones, right? And something happened in that scene that involved Katie. And it made absolutely no sense to me. For the simple fact, you had all these people in here. Now, up to this point, nobody knew Katie had been found. There was no press conference. The press was left out of the discovery of Katie because it takes place 8 years after she went missing, right? So nobody knew this. So when she pops up at this family function, there was no, oh my God, is that Katie? It was none of that. Now, granted, the shenanigans that was going on at the time she popped up, I would imagine nobody was paying 100% attention to it. But even after, nobody brought it up. It was like, okay, that happened. But that scene, even though it was an awesome scene, and that's the example I was talking about earlier, I'm hot and cold with it. You know, it was a cool scene, but the scene didn't make sense in the grand scheme of it all. But cool. Also, we're dealing with this supernatural force here. Once again, I'm dancing around spoilers here. We're dealing with a supernatural force that apparently can do much more than just possess Katie. And I'm wondering why the logic didn't make sense. And, you know, it just didn't make sense why she became the puppet master and of sorts. Like, I can't get into it because I don't want to spoil it. This is a non-spoiler review. But if you see the movie, you know what I'm talking about. The fact that she's able to do some of the things that she's doing is like, well, why does she care about getting free? You know, why does this thing care about being let loose? If it's, you can she was doing more damage when she was bound in a wheelchair than she did after she got loose. It just didn't compute with me. That's the one thing I literally left out the theater a little mad about. I was really upset about that. But in another thing, the last thing that I would point out negatively is the ending. Even though the ending is a satisfying ending, it didn't quite land. It was so close, but it didn't quite get there. But I did leave happy. I did leave satisfied. I thought it was a really, really good movie, a really good horror movie. Even though I have my complaints, I think it's one of the better horror movies I've seen in a while, you know, in the theater. I really felt like it was money well spent. Lee Cronin's The Mummy gets a letter grade of a C+. Yeah, it was good. It was a good horror movie. It should have been better, but it was really, really good. Really, really good. But that's just one man's opinion. I would like to know yours. Did you watch Lee Cronin's The Mummy going in thinking you was going to see Brandon Fraser and running through the desert shooting mummies? I would love to know your thoughts of the film. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.